Hello, welcome to the channel 12 Step Guide with Troy O. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today with you on this step. We're going to start step 4. It's a very important step in the recovery process. And why is that? Well, one of the promises, 9 step promises, to get to see how my experience can benefit others. All that garbage I went through, it wasn't all for nothing. So, recovery in the making. Step 4, we will be looking only at the big book Alcoholics Anonymous today, 1939. We will begin step 4 today. I will provide you the instructions. This is going to be filmed over 5 different sessions. So we're only doing the first session today, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to explain that reason to you so that you understand. And as we progress in this today, if I cover something you don't understand, don't worry about it. We're going to, like prying a rock out of the ground, we're going to circle that sucker until we get hold of it. So we're going to come back to things. Sometimes repetitiveness, going over the same thing, can be helpful. And I believe this is one of those times. So, what is step 4? Okay, 1939, I'm teaching out of the original book. The pages I give you today are going to be out of the original book released in 1939. The page numbers are sometimes 13 numbers up, other times 10. Anyway, so step 4, we're going to find this in How It Works, page 71 in the original. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. What does that mean? Searching, that's we're looking around, right? Heavy. Fearless, doing it without fear. Well, that's interesting. Moral, that's got to do with right and wrong within ourselves. There's a safe, simple process how to do this. So don't sweat it. I'm going to get into that with you, and I'll also get into ways that aren't so safe and aren't so gentle that I have seen done in the past, basically because there's simply a lack of understanding of how to do this step. But there truly is a set of instructions. So, where are we going to start today? I want to start, if you've seen the last video, and I encourage you to, in step 3, you'll know where we're beginning. If not, I encourage you to go back and look at that. So anyway, right at the end of step 3, this is page 76 in the original book, some last thing, the last sentence. This was only a beginning, though if honestly and humbly made, in effect sometimes a very strong one was felt at once. So that's the end of step 3. Now we're going to get into a little foundation before step 4. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. That's strong, healthy, energetic action. That's vigorous action. The first step of which a personal house cleaning. This has to do with us internally, which many of us had never attempted. He believes most of us have never engaged in this process. Many people who have come into the program have relapsed, never engaged in this process. It was a part of the reason why they relapsed, in my opinion. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, he's talking about step 3, that decision that we made in step 3. It could have little permanent effect, so maybe you put the drink down temporarily, but maybe it doesn't stay down if you don't continue on with the steps, or maybe you're closer possible to a relapse. So it could have little permanent. That's permanent is forever, I guess, or something. It's constant. Could little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous to strain yourself, a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us from a useful, happy life. So let's pick that over for a second. Strenuous effort to face, that's step 4 and 5, and be rid of. That's step 6 and 7. Now in the big book, step 6 and 7 is going to be a bit elusive because Bill never quite understood it as he did 13 years later. And we're going to visit that and what happened and why. I mean, here's a guy that the step 4 is absolutely ingenious. My goodness. So don't get me wrong when I say I'm just trying to show you that we are still building on this process. If we understand it 90 years later, we can and still should be. Bill gave us a gift. He didn't give us the whole gift, in my opinion. So to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor, so this is going to be about alcohol today, Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're in another program, do the translation, or maybe you were affected by the alcoholic. Our liquor was but a symptom, a symptom. A, the squeak in the wheel isn't the problem, it's a symptom. The problem is in the wheel. Maybe it's a bad wheel bearing, for example. The alcohol was the outward, something's going wrong inside of us. And the alcohol is what's how we can tell and others can tell. So our liquor was but a symptom. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. What caused this problem? What were the conditions under which it was happening? So we know we're at step 4 now because it says, therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. In italics, squigglies, this was step 4. But before I go on, now, I was told in the program, oftentimes 40 years ago, by most people, either do step 1 or do step 1, 2, and 3 in the first year. And I have a question for you. When did Bill do step 4? So, to discover that requires us to hop on over to Bill's story in the original book, page 22. Now we know Bill was drunk at the table with every tea when he did steps 1 and 2. He soon after went into the hospital. He tells us he was at the hospital. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. He then took step 3, it appears alone. There I humbly offered myself to God. Again, I've already covered that in a previous video. So the last thing in that paragraph right at the bottom of 22, the original book, that without him I was lost. So that's the end of step 3. That's him having taken step 3. Now we're going to start step 4, and I'm going to read this. It's not long, and then we're going to unpack it. Again, if something doesn't, if you don't never been exposed to the steps or aren't quite sure what's happening, don't worry about it. We're going to cover this stuff. So one thing at a time. First, we got to unpack it, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute what's going on here. I ruthlessly faced my sins. Sins, immoral, selfish, harmful, often to others, maybe to ourselves, to whatever, to any living, I guess it would living, but perhaps to the spiritual world, wherever it applies. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend, that's God, take them away, root and branch. And why on earth would we do that? Well, it depends on what your step one is, but in this case, Bill's step one is alcohol. I have not had a drink since. So there's a reason. So interesting. Let me read the rest. There's only one more little paragraph. So we know that we know Bill's in the hospital. He said it, but I also know it because later on here he says he's still at the hospital. So he's at the hospital still. It's DT's 4 days, as I recall, where I used to be a counselor at a treatment center, handing this medication out and whatnot. So yeah, you're pretty starting to function okay after that. If you got some other health issues, maybe a little more, but let's imagine 2 weeks in to the treatment center at best. In the treatment is that it's not a drug alcohol treatment center, it's just for the DTs here back in 1934. My schoolmate visited me. Now a schoolmate is Ebby T from the Oxford groups, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to right all such matters in the utmost of my ability. So, what's going on here? ABT's coming in. He's in a fourth step program, the Oxford group. So, Bill Wilson's getting sober in a fourth step program that clearly had more to it than the four absolutes. I covered that in an earlier chapter, and we're going to find more of that. We're translating where the 12 steps are in a fourth step program. And so this is a big ball because we're covering steps 4 through 9 here in that short paragraph. And I'll break them down for you because we're going to jump over to step 4 pretty soon. Some things have changed. See, there might be a difference in a moral program and a program for alcoholics and drug addicts, but you'll find it's not going to matter either way. Once you understand the process, you'll understand why that is. But let's start back again. So I ruthlessly faced my sins. It's step 4, and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away. I believe that's step 6. Again, it'll be a little elusive here in this book. Take it away, root and branch. So we're going after the root, we're going after the branch, we're going after the whole plant. We're not holding back. He's not had a drink since. Something profound happened. I believe that's step 6 and 7. We're going to get into that later. His schoolmate visited him. Now Bill fully acquainted him with his problems and deficiencies. They tell you, they made a list of people. Now it's as interesting. He says it in reverse. He says step 8, with whom I had hurt. And then he says step 4, or toward whom I felt resentment. So when Bill's writing this, he's writing it in reverse. He's targeting people he's hurt even before his own resentments, but somewhere along the way he realized for the alcoholic and drug addict, probably the other way, if you couldn't sift through that stuff first, it would be more difficult maybe to see the other stuff. And I'm going to also suggest this is a soft step 4 and 5. And why do I say that? Because I don't think there was a whole lot of time to necessarily unlock everything, and you have future times to do a step 4, right? It's every so often. In the books that I had wrote, back in '98, I broke it up into step 10, kind of broke it up some. We'll look into that at some point in the future. Right now, it's about Alcoholics Anonymous material. So he's listing step 8 before he's listing step 4. And then he's going on to talk more about step 8. So in this moral program, I express my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. So that's step 9. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. Again, now I'm going to pay homage to Bill for breaking this out the way he did and easing us into that, because I'm sorry I'm an asshole can be I'm sorry you're an asshole if they don't accept your apology and you're a little too early on that stuff. So we're not going to worry about making those kinds of amends just now. That doesn't mean there's not an apology. If it's imminent in the moment, you can say sorry to someone and it's not going to cost you a relationship or something. Go on and do that. Um, Step 10, a daily step. You can do that any old time. Doesn't hurt. So for now, we're going to come back to this because we're going to come back to it in 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. So if there's something that didn't make sense to you right now, don't sweat it. Now we're going to skip right on over to step 4. And that's going to be page 76 in the original book. It's probably 13 pages up or down. So I'm just going to read a little bit till we get to the directions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact finding and fact facing process. The word business and the word commercial mean the same thing. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade, the value of the stuff you own. In our case, the stuff inside of us. One object is to disclose damage or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. So to get rid of the things that really aren't of value and not hanging on to them. Oh, I wish I hadn't have thrown that out. Hoarder, maybe. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. He has to get honest with it, lest he go bankrupt. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested, that showed up in various ways, was what had defeated us. So some parts of ourselves showed up and defeated the better parts of us. We considered its common manifestations. So its common events, actions, and behaviors. We looked at our lives trying to figure out what makes us tick. So this is Bill figures this out along the way, okay, from this 4-step program to now. And here's the deal for the alcoholic anyway, but I think largely many of us, resentment is the number one offender. Resentment. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. So that's some inward unmanageability. It can mean more than that, but at least that. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill, somehow this has manifested itself into a mental illness, physical illness in us. We have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, that's that inward unmanageability, we straighten out mentally and physically so we can recover from this temporary insanity. So now we're going to start getting to some directions how to do step 4. In dealing with resentments, we set them on paper, period. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry, period. I'm going to set the book down now. We're done reading today. It goes on, but we've got our directions. it doesn't say one resentment, it says resentments. So, so what's he saying? Okay, I'm going to break it down in common language. So, an institution, right? We know what people piss you off. Okay, so an institution may be a bank, Department of Corrections, a police, a school, church, self-help organization, nonprofit, government, airlines, the bar. Some, principles. A principle might be a truth or possibly a mistruth in us. It might be something that ain't even really true when we get there, which leads to our support, our supporting a belief, a truth that supports us to believe something that may or may not even be true, a behavior or a chain of reasoning. So, uh, people, places, things, situations which even remotely anger us. So that's another way of saying it. We are going to make a list of people, places, things, or situations with whom we felt resentment. Now, I'm going to talk to the first time individual doing a step 4. So anything that remotely ever pissed you off, you're going to put down on paper. So let's make our paper. I recommend no computer. Spend the whole day making a nice little paper for yourself. You never get around to step 4. How about this? How about we just pull out a paper and pen and we make 5 columns? Okay, 5 columns. We're going to need 5 columns. Here they are. Just up there in that corner is my little scribble. It says resentment. There's 5 columns. Notice the paper is along the long way there so we can go across these 5 columns. I'm only covering the first column today, and we're going to cover 4 more columns later on. So why is that? So what we're going to do now, right? We're going to start just writing anybody who ever pissed us off, person, place, thing, a situation. Look at an alcoholic knows that's the easiest thing to admit who's pissing you off. That's not a problem. We're only putting the name, nothing else. Oh, what if I don't remember? If you can't remember when you come back to it, why are you angry? I guess it wasn't that big of a deal after all. Now, if there's 2 Johns, for example, John from school and John from work, well, you John from school, John from work, just enough to know who you're talking about, just brief words. Just brief words. So all the people that ever pissed you off, places that pissed you off, things that pissed you off, situations that pissed you off, or you felt a little resentment, or you don't like it, or whatever the hang up is. I also, and it's not in the big book, so I want to be clear about that, have a couple of other suggestions for you. I would also like for you to enter, and maybe this makes sense to you, magic words or phrases. What do I mean by that? Words or phrases that you use when you're trying to insult someone else, hurt them because you're angry with them, or you're using them in a manner of resentment. You might be calling your someone, could be your sibling or wife, or you use some nasty words or phrases, and they come up. Put them down on the paper. Just what the phrase is. And I also recommend other things such as racist words, maybe beliefs, thoughts towards other sexes, other countries, or other people's belief systems that anger you or cause you to feel negative towards them. In one of the earlier ones, we were, maybe it was step 2, talking about these 5 different people: a safecracker, an alcoholic, a minister, a businessman. Maybe there was another one, and I had explained the jumping off points, what make them tick. So what we're doing is we're setting out on a path to enter on paper everything we do know about ourselves in an effort to find out what we don't know about ourselves. Now, why don't we just go across? Why down? Down keeps you disconnected. You can easily, okay, Bill, John, Bobby, oh, the bank, da 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 da, right? You just keep going with that. You know what? Spend a week, spend up to 6 weeks if you need to. Not any longer than you have to. At some point, when the list starts slowing down, you could start working on two. So what happens if you go the other way? You go across. Let me just use a harsh example, okay? So Johnny's making his list, and so he puts Jack. And what's going on with Jack? Well, Jack was throwing his wife the bone, or his girlfriend. So and he's writing all this out, and he's pissed off about it. So then things aren't going that well. He's really feeling it, and he's alone. So then the second one, well, the second one is wife or his girlfriend. Well, his wife or girlfriend caught the bone, and she's throwing it back. Now he's holding the pen like a spear, and he's gouging out the table. Maybe he's off and running, heading on down to the bar, all pissed off or angry. And that's it for step two, sobriety, and the whole rest of it. Let's not do that. I've heard tell of people, it's different if you're journaling every day, working with a counselor, just stuff going on, little step 10 stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just covering your whole life. And it's a lot easier to yap out your life than it is to write it on paper. So let's say somebody's writing it out on paper, and they're writing out their whole life story and pages because they don't know how to do step four a safe way. Nobody's ever showed them. And it is my opinion that this is a safer way. I'm trying to go by the directions I've done it, I think. And I'll get into it more in a second. So they're crying, they're alone, working through all this stuff, and then what? Then it's time to go and bring it to a sponsor. And what? You bring the whole thing to your sponsor and do one or two things. Say, read this, and that's like they throw it in the trash and say, why don't you tell it to me? Or two, you start reading it to them. That's like a computer at the counselor's office that ain't working right or something. It's this third thing in the way and standing between you two. I always hated a computer at the counselor's office. Anyway, it's a side note. As a look at it, it's best if it's natural. And the other thing that can happen is you can start building up a wall between the things that you don't want to touch because there's nobody there to help you look at it. And by the time it does happen, you've built a wall and you've taken the naturalness out of it. So for the next week to 6 weeks, now if you're in a treatment center right now and you do a soft step 4 across the board, as I progress more with this, that's different. Is treatment centers maybe working with you on some of this stuff. And then we're going to come back the next time and we're going to look into the second column, and we're going to understand that. So for now, just run a second window, and anytime you got something going on, you just write it on your paper, keep a little bit of a note, and just keep it safe somewhere. Not much information. Write in code even if you need to. If you're in the Department of Corrections doing this, you write in code. Nobody else needs to know what's on your paper but you. Nobody else, no matter who or what. Just you got to know. This is a safe process. Only you know. None of us getting sober to make life worse on ourselves. And I'm going to get into that more because if you're in the Department of Corrections, I recommend you do. There's two in the last, and I wasn't real clear about it, 2 people, a relapser, or if you're in the Department of Corrections, you start this right away. You can always be working on the other steps, but you can be working on this too. Well, I hope you found this helpful. I did my best to say it as best I could. You have a nice day. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you in the next, or to having you with me. All right.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. In Step 4, we lay the groundwork for the 9th step promises. One of those promises is that we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Keep moving forward. It's worth the effort,